This was this was requested by a few people to be my next one, and honestly, I was looking forward to this one. Hello everyone, my name is Lucy, welcome back to my channel, and this character essay is part of a series of character essays on the Archie Comics characters and how them and their relationships with others should be portrayed in Riverdale that would help dimensionalize them better while staying truer to the comics. Today in the hot seat we have everybody's favorite, insatiably hungry, lazy, and hilarious comic book icon turned cringy romantic bad boy, Jughead Jones. Jughead Jones made his first appearance as a character alongside Archie Andrews and Betty Cooper in the 22nd issue of the Pep Comics series in 1941. Jughead generally has a wry and sarcastic sense of humor. He's considered a bit of an oddity, but prefers his nonconformism as opposed to others' styles. His quirks often make him the butt of teasing from Reggie, Veronica, and other classmates and teachers. He is seen as lazy, obsessed with food, and uninterested in girls and romance. He can usually be identified by his long nose, half-closed eyes, S-shirts, and crown-like button beanie hat. In spite of his reputation as slow and lazy, Jughead has actually been frequently shown to be very intelligent, and often surprises his more skeptical friends, notably Reggie and Veronica, on his vast knowledge on a wide variety of subjects. He's an extremely good student, which often exasperates his teachers as he pays them no attention. His intelligence varies from story to story. In many cases, he has trouble maintaining good grades due to his extreme laziness. But once in Little Archie, it was revealed that as a student, that Jughead was second only to Dilton Doily. His intelligence is displayed by his sharp wit and occasional deep insight. In his spare time, he enjoys playing video games, reading comic books, and skateboarding. While Jughead rarely takes an interest in sports, he's a very fast runner due to his constant evasion of Ethel and his determination to be at the front of the lunch line every day. Coach Cleats often tries to recruit him for various school teams, usually without success. There was a running gag in the earlier comics in which some of the characters were trying to find out Jughead's real name while Jughead thwarted their efforts. In one story, Archie and Reggie go to the principal's office where a woman tells them that Jughead's real name is Steve. The audience learns later that the woman is actually Jughead's aunt, and she just said that in an effort to keep Jughead's real name, Forsyth, hidden. The time that it actually is revealed is in the Little Archie series when Mrs. Grundy reveals it at the start of the class. He's named after his ancestor, who was an American hero. Jughead actually went by the name for a brief amount of time, but after finding out that this ancestor was married 9 times, Jughead went back to being called Jughead. In the TV movie and subsequent comic book Riverdale and Back Again, which portrayed all of the characters 15 years after they graduated from high school, Jughead has become a psychiatrist. He has a successful private practice outside of Riverdale. In the comics, his career is usually expected to have something related to food due to his love for it. More than one story has suggested that when Pop-Tate retires, Jughead would buy the restaurant and take it over. You know you have a wild card of a character when both of those careers actually make sense for him. I'm at the point in this show where I can safely say that I hate their portrayal of Jughead's character. And I really genuinely mean it too. Like, it's one thing to dislike something, but I hate it. I absolutely hate it. So let's talk about this. He still makes dry, sassy comments, but the difference from the comics to the show is, in the show, he's totally serious about it all. In the comics, it's sarcasm and jokes, which is a huge part of his character's charm. Because they converted his character into such a serious one, it completely took away all of the charm he had with it.
It's called necrophilia, Reggie. Can you spell it?
Calm down, tall boy. You think I knew Keller was gonna be there?
I want to challenge you to a race.
Shut the hell up, imposter.
Boy, Archie, Veronica's got you wrapped around her little finger.
What the hell, Archie? Did my dad tell you about this too?
No. And you can continue polluting the South Side with your little straws of death. The Coopers are one of the most respected families in Riverdale.
You two are just a couple Centerville scumbags.
Archie, this one's pretty simple, so even you might be able to get this if you stopped kissing up to Hiram for like 2 seconds.
You know what they're gonna want on the other side, Archie? Your head on a stake. All of ours.
In case you haven't noticed, I'm weird. I'm a weirdo. I don't fit in, and I don't want to fit in. Have you ever seen me without this stupid hat on? That's weird.
How I would instead want him to be visualized for this show is to definitely be the show's comic relief. Not even a question. That's definitely who he is in the comics. He and Archie get into all kinds of shenanigans together, and Archie is very much the straight man to Jughead's comedian. Now, while I wasn't totally on board with the show turning him into an emo, grungy kid, I would still be okay with it if he was still funny and his jokes were jokes and they weren't like, he didn't really mean them. And in season 1, I would say about half of the comments that he made were alright, and they were, you know, kind of a little bit more humorous and on the I'm just kidding side. But by season 2, completely gone. Everything he says is totally serious. He's not witty anymore, he's not sarcastic anymore, he's not charming at all. I do not understand the appeal of his character now. I don't, I'm sorry. Like, I've seen all the stuff online, I know that there's a bunch of girls who are in love with Jughead, and I don't know why. I know that part of the reason it has to be because it's Cole Sprouse, and I remember Cole Sprouse got super popular again, I think right before Riverdale came out, so I'm sure that might have something to do with it. But anyway, since I know that Riverdale is a teen drama mystery show, I know that much like the other characters, you can't just take a complete reincarnation of his comic book character and plop it in TV and expect it to work. He has to have some development, he has to have an arc, and he has to be molded so he can fit into the teen drama genre somehow. But I still think they certainly could have done that with him. I think instead of being a brooding ex-gang leader who solves mysteries with his girlfriend and dramatically writes down everything that he sees, he should be more relatable, he should be funnier, he should still be somebody who loves things like skateboarding and playing video games and, you know, that kind of teen vibe. I don't know if there's a name for it. He could still wear his iconic S shirts. I wouldn't also mind seeing him wearing some t-shirts with bands on them. Obviously he'd still have the hat, but he would be a sassy, hungry loudmouth. He would still have that witty, sarcastic, and dry sense of humor that made him so iconic in the comics in the first place. That would be his main source of charm and charisma, and would make him really relatable. And to incorporate him more into the teen drama atmosphere, I would be okay with him being a little bit more rebellious, or his jokes being a little bit more crude or edgy, but that can still be charming. A rebel doesn't have to be this, like, damaged, sad outsider who writes away their feelings and, oh, I'm so sad. And if they would ever go to school in this show, yes, I would still want him to be very lazy, but still very smart and still get good grades. I feel like he would be one of those students who doesn't pay attention, he's very lazy, he would fall asleep in class, but he would still get decent grades because it would be clear he doesn't like school, not because he's dumb, but because he's bored. I think a good character arc for Jughead would be him just learning to be a better, more caring friend and person. Another big part of Jughead's character in the comics is that he's very loyal to his family and his friends. And while I think that yes, this should always exist, I feel it should get significantly stronger as the show progresses. I would say not exactly like, obviously, but kind of along the lines of Santana Lopez from Glee's development. Like, she starts out the series kind of just making wisecracks and insulting everybody and not really caring about how they feel about it or their well-being, but then by the end of the series, she's very loyal to the people that she's close to and her friends and would do anything for them. I think that same arc would be very good for Jughead. I would think at the end of the series, in particular, he would be the best, most loyal friend that anybody would be privileged to have. We're gonna talk more about his friends at the end of the video, but for now... Something that has always set Jughead apart from Archie and Reggie is his utter lack of interest in girls and romance. Despite this, however, he still sometimes attracts girls to him. His most ardent admirer is Ethel, who chases after Jughead at every opportunity, despite Jughead's constant and blunt refusals. He usually only agrees to be in Ethel's company willingly if she offers to cook him food. He has been known to occasionally reciprocate Ethel's feelings. He fell in love with her in the Life with Archie, the Married Life series, where the Archie marries Veronica stories ended with Jughead and Ethel's wedding. In the early issues, Jughead is portrayed as a misogynist who straight up hates women. This has been disproved many times since then, however. As the comics evolved into more modern times as early as the 1980s, Jughead evolved with them. Notably, they gave him his little sister Jellybean in this era. Jughead has since been depicted as disliking romance because it leads men to make fools of themselves, not women. In one story, Jughead says, "I don't hate girls, I just love food more." And in another story, when he notices how upset Miss Grundy is on her birthday, it was Jughead who rallied all of the students to come together and cheer Miss Grundy up. In the story Food Phobia, Archie Andrews and Dilton Doily discover one possible reason for Jughead's immense appetite. In this particular issue, Archie and Dilton think they discover that girls make Jughead nervous, and thus he turns to food for comfort. When Archie and Dilton bring this discovery to Jughead's attention, he is stunned and actually loses his appetite. We are going to talk about the era of the comics now in which the writers tried to give Jughead serious romantic interests. In the run of the comics, Jughead has had 3 girlfriends: Debbie, Joni, and January McAndrews. The latter, January McAndrews, is Archie's descendant from the distant future, who starred with Jughead in Jughead's Time Police, a short-lived spin-off comic about their adventures traveling through time. That's all I'm gonna say about her. Now let's talk about Joni and Debbie. Now, in a particular story, it's revealed that the reason he doesn't chase after girls is because of a childhood heartbreak, which happened right before he moved to Riverdale. Little Jughead befriended Joni and they had a puppy-love relationship. Jughead's family moved to Riverdale and he had to leave Joni behind. Determined not to go through any heartbreak again, he kept little Joni's picture in his wallet as a reminder and swore off girls. But then, a fetching woman named Debbie moved into town. Jughead overcame his heartbreak and they started dating. But, hold everything! During this time, Joni came back. She paid a sudden visit to town and was now a young woman. She told Jughead that she never forgot about him and that she still loved him. The two shared their first kiss, but before Jughead could decide if he wanted to continue their romance, she leaves town again, promising him that they'll be together again. The comic strip even had Jughead say, "Sometimes life is just more interesting than burgers and shakes." Now I'm gonna go on record and say that that is one of the most out-of-character things he's ever said. For a time, Debbie and Joni served as Jughead's own love triangle. Fans didn't like this change, however, so both girls disappeared and Jughead reverted back to his old independent lifestyle. A few years later, a girl named Trula Twist appeared. She tended to drive Jughead crazy with her ability to predict his next moves, and at some point they developed a love-hate relationship. I don't know if they ever officially dated, but she's another pretty insignificant one. In 2016, Jughead's orientation was officially confirmed to be asexual. This happened in the stories of Chip Zdarsky and later Ryan North and Mark Waid for the Jughead comics as part of the new Riverdale line. Both Riverdale fans in the asexual community and Cole Sprouse himself have complained about Jughead's sexuality erasure in mainstream television and expressed desire to see the character's asexuality explored. Now, in the light of them erasing Jughead's sexuality, you better believe it's extremely problematic. I talked about this more in my horrible things about Riverdale that not enough people talk about video. The fact that the media has very, very little asexual representation, and the fact that the Archie comics literally have a character that is canonically asexual since 2016, and the fact that they completely rid his character of that and make him another straight guy, it's problematic. It is. Cole Sprouse noted that Zdarsky's version is the only version of the comics that Jughead is asexual, officially. In the digests and the classic Archie stories, he's aromantic, which he said is a different thing, but still deserves attention. Now, I'm glad that he said that asexual and aromantic are two different things, because they indeed are, and in this show, I think that Jughead should indeed be both. If the show really insisted on putting Betty and Jughead together, I would at least want them to stay true to Jughead's sexuality a little bit. Asexual people can and do have relationships, and to explore the dating life of an asexual character in a show as huge as this would have likely educated a lot of people if they had done it right. It wouldn't be my idea of an interpretation of Jughead, but it would still be better than what we got, which was a full-blown heterosexual. Betty and Jughead still had their kind of cute moments in that first season, but for me, they stopped being cute as soon as they started having sex, because that's when I knew that Jughead's character was just not at all what he was supposed to be. If they really insisted on putting Betty and Jughead together as a romantic couple, I would at least expect them to make them just a romantic couple, not a sexual one. Now, while that reincarnation would have still been better than what we got, of course, my preferred version of Jughead would be him asexual, aromantic. He is not attracted to anyone. He doesn't want to kiss anyone, touch anyone, date anyone, ever. I have nothing against the portrayal of somebody who's asexual and likes to date, but that's not who Jughead is. He doesn't like to date. He doesn't like the whole idea of relationships or girls, and he never has. Now, if you could imagine the personality, wit, and spunk of the Jughead that I described back in the character segment, and pair that with him being asexual and aromantic, that's Jughead. That's my preferred version of Jughead in this show. It is obviously nothing like what they went with instead, which is, I think, a huge reason why I hate this show as much as I do. And I know that part of the reason why they changed Jughead has to be because they want girls to swoon over him and be like, oh my gosh, Jughead, oh. But I still even think that that could work with the version of Jughead that I just described, my version of him. Could you imagine him having that dry, sarcastic, spunky personality and him being totally untouchable? Like, nobody has a chance with him because he's not into that? Girls would lose it! They would lose their minds! And it would be so much more interesting and so much less problematic than what we got. Now, I usually have a love interest section in these essays, and I mean, I don't want Jughead to have any love interests, obviously, so this is kind of his love interest section. But we're gonna end this video on a positive note, I think, by talking about all of Jughead's friendships that he could have had. Let's go. Now, like I said, if this show had played their cards correctly, Jughead would indeed be the most loyal and best friend that anybody could ever want. So we're gonna talk about all of the friendships that I would have loved to see in this show for him, and all of the friendship arcs with that. His most prominent friend in the comics, and thus His should-be most prominent friend in the show is, of course, Archie Andrews. Archie is Jughead's best friend and foil in the comic books. With their opposite personalities, their relationship often mirrors that of a comedic duo. Archie was the first person that Jughead met upon moving to Riverdale, and he's often dragged into Archie's schemes and antics. Jughead is usually the first one to bail Archie out of trouble, though he sometimes ends up making things worse. Jughead, extremely loyal, is willing to do almost anything to help his friend, something that Archie occasionally takes for granted. I talked about how angry I was that Betty and Veronica's close friendship was completely erased out of the show. This friendship between these two classic foils is iconic and 80 years in the making. And in the show, they're not even friends. I mean, they're supposed to be, but they have no scenes or storylines together anymore. And I feel the same about Archie and Jughead. I mean, I hate that they aren't closer in this show. I would love the dynamic of Archie and Jughead to still be best friends and total foils. Jughead would do his very best to help Archie and always get him out of trouble, and again would be an incredibly loyal friend to Archie. Jughead and Archie would often get into a lot of schemes and shenanigans together, which would again be a more humorous part of the show to lighten the mood. Because of this comedic dynamic and because of the fact that they're teenage boys and so different, they would hardly ever get into really serious conversations with each other, but every so often they would, showing how much they genuinely care for and respect each other. They would always be willing to help each other, and they would surely be best friends. The next friendship I'm going to talk about, which I think would be another interesting one, is Reggie Mantle. Reggie is another one of Jughead's friends, though his and Jughead's relationship is defined by their constant competition. Reggie never loses an opportunity to insult Jughead, and Jughead usually plays tricks on Reggie in return. Though it often appears that they hate each other and will never admit otherwise, they do care about one another. Jughead will even help Reggie escape when Moose Mason is angry with him. Many issues involve Reggie and Jughead trying to outdo one another with pranks and bets, but Jughead almost always comes out the victor. He's revealed to be extremely clever and creative when necessary, and he often takes advantage of Reggie's weaknesses, all while having fun. This is one relationship that I don't think I'd change anything about from the comics to the show. A rivalry, but with a low-key underlying friendship, is exactly how I would want Reggie and Jughead. They would be constantly trying to outdo each other with pranks and bets, and would always be ranting about one another to Archie. They would hardly ever admit to having any feelings besides hate toward each other, but there would be those extremely rare occasions where it would surface that they like having one another around. Another rivalry friendship from the comics that I would have loved to see in this show, that I'm sure you all saw coming, is Jughead and Veronica. Jughead and Veronica in the comics are constantly arguing. Veronica can't stand his laid-back attitude and witticisms, and Jughead enjoys teasing her and making her lose her temper with clever comebacks. Often, he relishes causing her to get angry because he sees her as an uncaring, selfish snob. He once told Veronica that he was mad with passion for her and began popping up wherever she went to get her off his back after she criticized him publicly. In one issue, they were cast together in a school play which required them to kiss. Due to the way Jughead kissed her, she was caught up in the moment and fell in love with him for a little bit. However, Jughead managed to get her over the crush with the help of a garlic and onion sandwich. Now, of course, I already talked about this in my Veronica video, but I would love this love-hate friendship with Jughead and Veronica. Like I said, I would want Jughead to be a more comic relief character in the show, and in my Veronica video, I said that I would want Veronica to kind of be another one. So their dynamic would indeed be a funny and endearing one. They would often be making stabs at each other, way more often in the earlier seasons. In the earlier seasons, they would be really butting heads a lot, and they would just never really see eye to eye on anything. But as the show progresses, they would learn to genuinely care about and respect each other, and they would become good friends and allies. I think that this would be a very good friendship arc for the two of them, as they both learn to appreciate each other despite their differences. Jughead and Veronica's dynamic in the comics is one of my favorites, and it could have been so funny, cute, and fleshed out in the show. Jughead's other friends in the comics include Dilton Doily and Moose Mason. Jughead gets along with Moose better than all of the other boys because of his non-confrontational attitude and his disinterest towards Midge, Moose's girlfriend. And Jughead's nerdy ways and lack of interest in sports account for how well he gets along with Dilton. Now, since Dilton and Moose are more background characters than Archie, Jughead, Betty, Veronica, and Reggie, I think that both of those friendships could hold true in the show. I don't think that that would have to change. And finally, we are going to talk about Jughead's other best friend, Betty Cooper. You all knew this was coming. Now, if you've seen any other one of these videos for more than a couple of minutes, you will know that I would want Jughead and Betty to be very, very good friends in the show like they are in the comics. Now, while Jughead is generally uninterested in girls, he has always had a soft spot for Betty Cooper. Betty is a great cook, which is one of the reasons that he loves to hang out with her, and the two are generally open to each other about their feelings. Jughead also provides a shoulder to cry on whenever Betty has trouble with Archie or Veronica. One of the few things that Jughead does not like about Archie is how he takes Betty for granted. I've said it before and I'll say it again. This should be their relationship in the show. They should be such good friends and love each other, almost like brother and sister. It would show that a male and female could have a deep, loving, sentimental relationship but not be romantically involved. There is not enough of that in the media, and there never has been. So Betty and Jughead being that would be a good start. Now, I said this in my Betty video, but the one inkling of Bughead in the comics is Jughead telling Betty if he would ever willingly kiss a girl, it would be her. But again, that doesn't mean a whole lot because Jughead still does not want to kiss or touch anyone in that way. So any Bughead that's in the comics is Jughead just basically telling Betty, I don't like girls, but if I did, I would like you because you're the only girl that I'm friends with. And I think that's very sweet, especially for someone like Jughead. And in the show, it shouldn't have gone any further than that. And I think it would be so cute if Jughead always wanted Betty to end up with Archie. Like, imagine if it's the finale right before Betty and Archie get together for good, and Jughead is having a heart-to-heart with Archie about it, similar to Jim's heart-to-heart with Dwight at the end of The Office, or Schmidt's heart-to-heart with Nick at the end of New Girl Season 6, and Jughead's like, you love Betty, Archie. I think you always have. And then Archie's like, you're right. You're a good friend, Jughead. And then runs to find Betty. Jughead ships Archie and Betty in the comics. He totally does, and he thinks that Archie should choose her. So I think that in this show, if Jughead is just the president of the Barchie fan club, it would be really satisfying. Obviously, because of Jughead's cynical and dry nature, he wouldn't be like fangirling over it or anything, but I think that he would definitely always want it to happen and kind of push it toward that way if Archie ever needs guidance. Woo! Jughead, Jughead, Jughead. Now, this iconic character has existed for 80 years, and I obviously couldn't go into a full in-depth analysis of every single reincarnation that he has ever had in every single comic book. So if you have any other questions for me about Jughead's character, what I would want to see in the show instead, what I would not want to see, let me know in the comments. I would be more than happy to answer those. Or you could tell me your preferred reincarnation of Jughead for this failed teen drama mystery show. I know that his adaptation made a lot of people very angry and disappointed, so you could tell me about that as well. Tell me what you would have maybe wanted to see instead. Thank you ever so much for watching. If you liked this video, please be sure to like it and subscribe to my channel, and I hope that you have a wonderful, amazing day.